As we always kick off the show, I want everybody to take a moment and think about what Goldilocks reminds you of. To me, Goldilocks is all about balance because she didn't want anything too hot. She didn't want anything too cold, right? She didn't want anything too hard. She didn't want anything too soft. And to me, that epitomizes the balance we need to drive the kind of change and influence the change we want to see. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. And thank you for spending another lovely Saturday with us. I know it's balmy and warm for most of us, and hopefully it's a cool way to start the morning and get things going. As always, remember, this is being recorded. This is going to be shared out in the world, so be aware that you're all giving your consent to be on the show. And we're so excited to have you on Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, where we spend every Saturday morning talking about the importance of being centered and having a balance so that everything we do in life has the maximum opportunity to influence and empower our own journey and the journey around those with us. Okay, and why is centeredness important? When we think of Goldilocks, what comes to my mind is Goldilocks sitting and trying different chairs and saying, oh, this one is too hot, it's soft, this is too hard, oh, this one is just right. Then when she eats the soup, it's like, oh, this one is too hot, this one is too cold, oh, this one is just right, right? So as she goes through this process, she's finding that right balance for her. And it's a play on words and the play on the concept for us to remember in a very storytelling kind of way, the importance of being centered when we enter any scenario, any problem solving situation. Why? If we come from any of the extremes, we're already in a polarized position, and it's hard to bring people to a point of building consensus and influencing an outcome, right? Have you noticed that the people who are able to influence the most are people who understand both sides of the issue and are able to synthesize and bring people together? Ultimately, people don't engage unless there is a win-win opportunity. If one person wins and the other person loses every time, then there is no reason for the other person to engage, right? So if our goal is to live our purpose and our goal is to be empowered, then how do we do that from that centeredness? And as I build my own purpose and my own share of prosperity from that centeredness, I am able to impact everybody around us. And then as the rising tides lift all boats, as one person rises, everybody benefits, right? So it truly is a way of creating shared prosperity from that place of centeredness. And that is what we talk about when we get together every Saturday. Today, I am super excited to introduce a special topic we're going to do. We're going to do this every fourth weekend, every fourth Saturday of the month. My friend and co-coach, John and I have partnered together. We are both coaches in our own rights. We have our own coaching businesses, but we're coming together as Aspire, as Enneagram to aspire other people to reach their potential and live their purpose. And we're coming together to write blogs and do these shows to educate and bring people together. At the same time, also demonstrate that our differences and the different age, gender, cultural background, all the things that John and I bring truly enriches the conversation. And it's our way of further demonstrating when we are able to meet each other in the middle and we build together and we collaborate together, the experience becomes richer for both parties and everybody who's engaging with us. So there's a dual purpose while we are doing this to help you, as well as to demonstrate that it is possible coming from different places to still collaborate and work and bring value. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for your partnership, John.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and part of the program.
So we've been talking every week on layering the blocks of how do I find my purpose, combining what I love, what I'm great at, and what the world needs, right? So when those three come together in that centeredness, right, in that intersection is my purpose. So even my purpose is found in that centeredness of those three pillars, right? So that vectors tell us where we need to be as we pursue our own purpose. We also talked about how the book that is coming out is going to give you some insights and examples of how do I take real life situations that are positive and negative, and how do I see the positivity in it, and how do I see what I am able to get from it in order to actually nurture and build my purpose. Okay, so some nuggets that every week I share some nuggets with you guys. So today, the 3 nuggets I want to share with you is the first one is about transformation. You hear me every week talk about how every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation, right? Every time we get together, we're learning from somebody. We are learning something about ourselves, and we're learning something about how to be, how to become, how to fulfill our purpose, and what are the different tricks and strategies I can employ, right? So as we take this journey, keep in mind the Enneagram is also another building block for your transformation. Okay, so participate in the conversation knowing that this is an element of your transformation, and how can you start layering that in, and how can you start integrating that in addition to our conversation, some of the resources you can go to, or if you need coaching, all of those things start thinking about, okay? And as we work through the introduction of the Enneagram and overlaying our prior conversations on self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management, right? We've talked through those. And we've also talked about our right brain, left brain functions. The right brain is the being, and the left brain is the doing. The right brain is the relationships, and the left brain is the things I do to be successful, right? So keep in mind that as I transform and as I grow as a being, an Enneagram is going to help me better understand and relate to myself as a being and relate to others in the way they show up. I'm going to be able to, and each of you are going to be able to build relationships that are authentic and strong, and they become the fertilizers. They become the underpinning for your success, because none of us, no matter how wonderful we are and how talented we are, none of us are going to accomplish anything on our own, right? I may know everything that needs to be done in my company, but can I do every job in my company? No, I can't do it all at the same time. So relationships are important. How can understanding myself through Enneagram better help me understand relationships and build better relationships? And the third nugget I want you to remember is kindness. Kindness is such a precious gift. Dispense it very, very liberally and generously. And you have to always remember to start with you. A lot of us are harder on ourselves than we're kind to other people, right? Please remember to start kindness with yourself. Being kind to yourself, making time for yourself, and making room for yourself is equally important. I say that while smiling because just yesterday, John and I were having a call, and John reminded me, Kas, you need to take some time for you, right? So the lovely thing about having relationships and having meaningful relationships is even when we forget, there are people to tap on our shoulder and say, hey, take a time out. Take a time out. You're kind of running empty. You need to take a time out. You know, what can I do to help you, right? Those are the kind of things that you need to start thinking about as we start building the relationships. And with that, I would love to bring my partner on, John. John is the founder of Leading Wins, and he is a certified coach. He coaches organizations, leaders. He helps build teams, and he coaches in the community. So this is something he does for a living. He does it very well. I am so honored and proud to be partnering with him. And John and I are going to be talking about how do we take the introduction of Enneagram and walk you through the process of understanding what Enneagram is, and how can you start relating to it? This is a very large scope subject matter. And so we're not going to be done with 1 week. That's why we're going to do it over multiple weeks. And so mark your calendar every 4th week of the month. John and I are going to be here talking about Enneagram and talking through how you can start integrating that in your life. Okay? And if any of you want coaching opportunities, you want to have one-on-one conversations, you can reach out to either of us, whoever you feel comfortable with, okay? So you have that freedom to do that as well. And our backgrounds are here. When you go back and watch the videos, I'm going to post this on YouTube. When you go back and watch the videos, you will have information about us. And also the flyers have our information. So you would have seen the flyers on all our social media, and all of that is already available to you. So with that, John, go ahead and let's kick this off. Okay. So John, why don't you help us go through the 3 centers of intelligence in Enneagram and why it's important. And also it's a good time for us to introduce which center you and I come from.
All right. Awesome. Well, the Enneagram definitely near and dear to my heart. I was introduced to it about 3 or 4 years ago specifically, and have just, not only has it helped my marriage, but just how I work with individuals, how I lead my company, how I interact daily with people. I've 3 young boys too, and I know they may still be developing into their type, but it's easy to pick out some similarities even to how to approach them as a dad as well. But the Enneagram, the one reason I love the Enneagram so much is it really is, I think, a roadmap to our core of understanding ourselves, how we operate, what triggers us emotionally. And isn't it nice to just have a playbook that we could lean on daily to help develop and help self-grow? And that's really, truly what I love about it. I mean, there's so much you can explore, but it really gets to the core of who we are, why we are the way we are, how we use our strengths, what are certain blind spots that may pop up in our lives. And it's really helped me with self-understanding. And, the ability to understand ourselves is the first point of, I think, us developing as a person. I mean, without that self-awareness, it's tough to fully grow. So to really kind of sit back and be honest with ourselves, what's really our strengths, what could be derailing us from success, and be open to growth. It's why I love the Enneagram, and I think it's such a useful and relatable tool to what we do day in, day out. I'm Enneagram Type 9, so I tend to operate in my body center. There's strengths in different opportunities for development as we go along. And Kas, if you want to go ahead.
Center. Yes, I operate from feelings. So those of you who know me know that's true, right? So everything starts from the heart, and everything starts from the sense of feeling. And none of these are good or bad. They just are, right? There are pros and cons, and it's knowing how much is too much and where to pull back and how to balance all of them, right? So each of us may have a natural place to come from, but it doesn't mean that's where we stay, right? So to add to what John was saying, let's think about a scenario. Let's imagine that each of you are an explorer, and you are exploring the world, and you are traveling through Siberia, and here comes a winter storm, okay? So you realize, oh my God, I can't continue on my exploration. I need to take shelter for the moment so that I can continue my exploration once the storm is past, right? So I build myself an igloo, and the lovely thing about the igloo is once I'm in there, it's 32 degrees. I am in constant temperature, right? So I'm in there relaxing, thinking about all the things I've done, maybe even making notes of everything I want to remember, right? Because now I get to take a break. And I realized the longer I stay in there, every breath I take is kind of coating the igloo on the inside and narrowing the capacity and the space inside the igloo, okay? Relate that to your childhood trauma. We all have had some trauma in our childhood. And how we have reacted to that and how we have shaped our life based on that is how we are continually showing up, unless we go back to that point of trauma and start peeling the layers and trying to figure out how do I rewire myself. So when we talked to Raj Kumari, we talked about how that trauma is not just your own childhood trauma, but based on epigenetics, it can also be your ancestral trauma, right? So where you naturally come from is the place you originally went to, right? Did you handle that childhood trauma from your body center, your heart center, or your head center? And then that's where you naturally go to. But that space helped us at that moment in time. It's not going to help us forever because we're adults. We're in an adult situation. So as we start growing as adults and as we start becoming self-aware, like John just mentioned, we need to start accessing the other centers because we need to start showing up as a whole person with my head, heart, and my body, all of it intact, right?
And Kas, I think an example that you shared earlier, about maybe taking a time out, and doing a self-check, I think it's a perfect lead into how you can grow by accessing the other three centers. So with you, I think about just preparing the show and, the students you teach and that feeling of care. Sometimes you can care too much for others without having that self-care that you echoed. So doing a check and balance, saying, okay, go into the head center space, the thinking center. What's my head telling me about, how I'm feeling right now? Do I need to take a time out? What's my body feeling? Do I need to rest? Do I need to, go out for a walk and enjoy, hopefully soon the fall weather, right? But, those sort of things that you have really can make you more balanced. And I think that's what's great about the Enneagram is while we have that core type that we're definitely drawn to, being aware of that and knowing when you're in balance and when you're out of balance is so huge in your development to really tap in to all three centers and make the wisest decisions and have the most impactful growth that you can have.
Yes. And do you see the numbers color coded? So when it's blue, it's the head center. So you see the person's head colored in blue. So 5, 6, 7 are head centers. 8, 9, and 1 are body centers, and they're brown. And you see the person colored, their body, their gut is colored brown. And then the heart center is 2, 3, 4, and you see the person's heart colored red, right? So this is how we're kind of visually relating it for you. And you're also seeing arrows there, right? So as you look at every number, think of the fact that John said he's a 9, right? John is a 9. And this is something John and I talk about all the time. John shares the same birthday with my husband, and John shares the same Enneagram number with my husband. He's much younger. So I always joke about if Mike had a son who was his twin, that would be John, right? So sometimes in life, you come across people who are so much similar to what you're used to. And we joke about how I connected with him on the first time we actually met at training, at Enneagram training a few years ago. And we clicked so well. And I always relate it back to his Enneagram type and my Enneagram type are so connected in my personal life. I was able to recognize that even before I got to know him. Okay. And you're going to find that in life. Sometimes you connect with people so well. It's because at a very soulful level, not the external, inside, internally, there's something that you can so easily connect. And that's why it feels like you've known somebody for a long time, right? And the more you understand your Enneagram, the more you start realizing who you naturally gravitate towards, right? And you see 9 and 2 have 1 in the middle, right? So if John and I have a disagreement, we can tap into the one that is on one side of us and find that spot as a way to solve our differences. And then the 9 arrow connects to the 3, and on the other side of the 2 is the 3. So John and I can also go to that point of 3 to solve our differences. The more points of differences you can solve, the more cohesive the relationship is going to be. You want to add to that, John?
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I mean, I joke around with my wife, if I can share that. She's a 3. So, when we're, going through different decisions and comes from the feeling center, I come from the body center. Sometimes we, if we disagree on something, okay, let's go to our head, let's go to our 6. And that's where we connect and look at it from that lens. I mean, I think going back to your point, Cass, about the preconceived, trauma, as a child, we're all brought up in different lenses of the world, no matter, where we grew up, how we were raised, we have this lens, and it's important, as it relates to Enneagram, are we using those lenses by default because that's what we're used to, or by choice because that's the right lens at that time? And as you look at different numbers and how you interact from a head, heart, and body centered piece, having the awareness to just recognize, hey, I may need to change my lens and look at it from one of these different centers can really help you navigate and make more informed decisions. And as I alluded to earlier, just have greater impactful growth because you do feel connected in all the pieces.
So let's take a step in a slightly sideways direction and give you some insight into why Enneagram, what is the goal of it. We've talked through this a little, but what is Enneagram? Where did it come from? And how is that roadmap going to help us? John, do you want to share some of your thoughts on where you see the roadmap and how that allows us to personalize and integrate?
Yes. I mean, I think, the Enneagram at this point is what I love about it. It's just one of the most profound ways to grow from an emotional intelligence standpoint, not only becoming self-aware. And as we go through future episodes, how we deal with relationships and really how we really make this work once we're fully aware of ourselves. But, knowing each center specifically and having a great understanding of, okay, these are, the core types that, when I use as a strength, they're awesome. These are the misuses potentially that may be holding me back. Knowing those steps and can help you in your developmental journey over time. And I think that's what's great about the Enneagram. I mean, you see this image of, two individuals in a maze, working together. I think of this maze almost just as a constant life journey. I mean, there's different roads that we're going to travel both personally, professionally throughout our entire life, but having the Enneagram as your playbook to know when your type of center, not only just your center, but when your core type is serving you the best, but also when you may need to lean on others, can really help you navigate that journey and be the best person you can be.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite possible when you start thinking about the different types, you may identify yourself as one particular type, but when you do a true introspective soul-searching deep dive, you might realize you're really something completely different. But there were other influences around you that was kind of putting you in a place where you were showing up a little different than what you really are. Okay?
And I would add to that, Cass. I mean, I know there's a lot of Enneagram tests and assessments out there across the board. I mean, I would say majority of them are probably 75% accurate, give or take. They'll narrow it down to your top, 2 or 3. But I do think that self-exploration that you alluded to, they're really taking time to digest your type, understand your type. Is this really me? At the core is huge in the self-development. And sometimes it takes time to get there.
There are a couple of ones that are the most reliable, and we use those in corporate training. But even when you take those tests, you still have to take a step back and understand, is the test is going to type you based on your point of trauma. It's not always even going to tell you how far you've evolved sometimes, because you may not have been totally forthcoming and been vulnerable when you took the test. So the true value is for each of us to do that introspective evaluation on an ongoing basis. And keep in mind, none of these numbers are good or bad, there just is. And every one of them have the potential of having a negative side and a positive side. Okay. And the value of Enneagram, unlike any other test, is it's just showing you where you are. And then it gives you a roadmap of how you can grow as a whole person across all 3 of your centers. It's not typing you and then putting you in a box. It's showing you where you have put yourself, and it's helping you walk out of the box you put yourself and explore the whole self as if in relation to the whole world. So which is why John and I love the Enneagram. It allows us to help our leaders take that journey of driving growth and impact in a meaningful way for business and organizations, but in an authentic way, so that when they take the journey, they're also able to take their teams for that journey. So it's so connected to emotional intelligence and the right brain, as opposed to the coaching that only focuses on the left brain and the activities and the tasks, right? So the left brain is transactional, right brain is transformational. And Enneagram allows us to tap into that transformational emotional intelligence right side to take the journey, because when the right side is leading, then the left side goes along for the journey. Okay? So here are the 3 types. Somebody's background is echoing, I think. Okay, I can't see who is not muted, so hopefully whoever's background is making a noise get muted. Okay, so let's start with, you want to start from the body center, John? Since your body center, we'll go from the bottom up.
Yes, we can start there. So, from a body-centered standpoint, you look at the core types and, you think movement, experience physical sensations, taking action or inaction, and kind of that desire to control one's environment overall is really at the core. And again, we're talking about, what do you go to at your core? And, in the blog post that we recently put out, it talked about, from a body standpoint, that's kind of the anger core, right? I may experience sadness or fear in certain areas, but at the core, kind of anger. And anger can be not necessarily directed towards others. It could be directed towards yourself. Why am I not taking action toward this? Why am I taking action in this way? So when you think of body center functions, specifically the productive uses is taking effective action, steadfast, and then kind of that gut knowing piece. I tend to, when in doubt, I always go directly to my gut. And normally where I need to grow and get better is listening to my gut sooner, because usually it tends to be the, 90% of the time, the right direction that, from a choice or from an action standpoint that I should take. So if you really you always feel a pit in your stomach, you think this is the whole, maybe you're a body center type of person. Misuses from the body center, you think excessive action could be too much. Maybe you're driving the train too fast sometimes when, you may need to pause and slow down and figure out where everybody else is, and even yourself to a certain degree. Passivity can be a challenge. Maybe you don't speak your voice when you have a chance. Maybe you are reluctant to take action in certain ways. And then that reactive piece, what kind of snaps you from an anger standpoint? How are we reacting? That passive aggressiveness to a certain degree can often occur from a body center core as a misuse.
Thank you for that, John. How many of you here think you might be a body center?
Me.
Know yours. Okay. Who's the other one?
Ariane. Yep.
Okay, Ariane and okay, I can see that. Okay. So next is heart center. I come from the heart center. I'm a 2. Okay. And heart center's core emotion is sadness. Okay. And so happiness is the other extreme of sadness, right? So that entire spectrum. And heart centers experience things through feeling. They relate to others at a very emotionally connected level. And then they're also very empathetic. They're sensitive to other people's feelings, other people's reactions. Have you come across in life where you have friends or people who are empaths? They're in a completely different place. They haven't talked to you in like 3 months. They pick up the phone and ask you if you're okay. Because at some level they can feel, because of their sensitivity, they can feel that something is going on with you, right? So if you're the kind of person who has this, what I call free-floating anxiety, that's what I call it. I have free-floating anxiety about somebody, and I actually pick up the phone and call people, right? And those are because you are so in touch with your feeling, your emotion, and you're sensitive to other people's feelings because you're connecting to relationships at that core emotional level. The productive uses of that is showing up with empathy, the ability to build lasting, authentic relationships, and then having compassion for people. When you have compassion for people and you have empathy for people, then it's easy to relate to people and be able to build authentic relationships. But that taken to the extreme can be negative, right? If I completely feel everything you feel, then you are going to be a little spooked about being around me, right? I had a friend in college. She was blind. And a lot of people thought because Anjali was blind, you can sneak past her. But she can not only tell who just walked by, she can even sense color from the energy that's coming from the person. So she will say, so-and-so, I know you're sneaking past me wearing such and such a colored outfit, right? So it can turn into emotional manipulation if the people who feel so deeply are not careful. Because you may feel what somebody else is feeling before they recognize their feelings. Has that happened to you? There might be a two in your relationship that always tells you how you're feeling, even before you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So there is a balance. Was that Gigi?
Ariane again.
Oh, Ariane, okay. And because a feeling center person is trying to connect to people, if it's overdone, it can be a situation where you end up playing roles to take care of the other person emotionally. So that's another negative place. And then overly sensitive, because of the sadness, because of all these emotions one is feeling, it's easy to overreact and be oversensitive and bring all of those clouding emotions in one spot, and it can be explosive. So just like in all things in life, in our strength is also our weakness. It depends on where on the scale it is, right? So once again, that centeredness is important, right? My ability to be very structured and very organized is a good thing. But if it goes to a point of controlling everybody else, it's a bad thing. My ability to understand and empathize with people is a good thing. But if I start using that to manipulate somebody, it's a bad thing. Okay? So in our strength is our weakness is something that we can never forget. It's a good interview question. When I'm always asked, what's your strength? I tell them. And when they ask me, what's my weakness? I always flip my strength and talk about it. Because it's a very constructive way of talking about your weakness and demonstrating to the potential employer that you understand that everything is on a spectrum and that balance is important. Now, the third one is the head center. Go ahead, John.
Yes. So the head center, you think of the people that are very idea driven. I would think is at the core of the head centered individuals that gather those information, generate ideas. You really kind of like to enjoy the pause. And when you pause, you just need your thought time. I want to be kind of collective in my space and have that time to mentally process. Very rational and very planning oriented as well. And while, talk about the productive uses, very objective, they have the ability to, really think clearly and see both sides to a puzzle, almost and to some degree take emotion out of this. And okay, let's look at this objectively. A very astute insight. And, from a productive planning standpoint, they really tap into, the numbers of logistics of how we can get from point A to point B, very much in that headspace. From a misuses standpoint, you think of paralysis by analysis. Sometimes overanalyzing, getting stuck in the head can be definitely a pitfall of this. While analysis is great, sometimes if we're stuck in our head too much and we're not taking action, right, that can definitely hinder, how we, grow as individuals, how we lead our teams, how we work with one another. So think about, oh gosh, it's 6 o'clock. I need to decide where I'm going to dinner. All of a sudden it's 9 o'clock and we haven't made a decision yet. That could be, kind of a pitfall of where we went with that. Sometimes projection, as I said, they're very idea centric. Sometimes they have a tendency in the headspace to project their own ideas onto others. And that can be misinterpreted in different ways. And then the over planning aspect. I mean, I think that kind of ties back into the restaurant, or you're thinking about a vacation. As you're planning a vacation with different types, let's say trying to get away, it'd be interesting to see the dynamics that may play. Okay, I'm going to take charge of this planning. You may have, a body center that's like, okay, let's go. I don't want to go. I don't want to plan. Let's go. And, the heart center is like, well, do we have to plan? Can we just stop and, smell the roses on this walk a little more? I mean, so just the different interplays that you can have with the different types of individuals is neat, but the headspace, they definitely tend to, a downfall. While it's a strength of planning, that over planning can definitely be a pitfall.
Now, when you look at all these three things, how wonderful would it be that wherever your natural starting point is, I'll start with my natural starting point. I come from a heart center, so I can sense and feel and relate. But I have a developed head center, therefore I can take all of that feeling and sensing and integrate that into planning and analyzing and getting insights. And then tie my body center and making sure that I'm able to execute it, right? And I execute it in a way that it is taking into consideration not just my feelings and my analytics, but also my gut knowing, right? Because normally decision-making is more of an art than a science. The reason it's an art is because we need to have highly developed centers in all three of these so that we can engage those appropriately to make a synthesized decision. And so the journey of Enneagram and the coaching of Enneagram is to take you from wherever each of you are in this journey to where the three centers meet, and you're in that sweet spot so that you are showing up in a way that you can feel, you can think, and you can act, right? Think of it as a three-legged stool. If any one leg is not functional, you do not have a functioning stool. Okay, so how do you stabilize yourself and find your centeredness? Is by finding where you are and then overlaying the other pieces so that you build that balance you need for your own growth and your own journey. And the value of a coach is to help you through that process. So keeping in mind, even Michael Jordan has a coach, right? We all have coaches. Like John and I help each other. Even coaches help each other, right? So this is the journey, and this is not a journey that is one and done. It's a perpetual journey.
Mm-hmm.
So having talked through the centers,
Kas,
go ahead.
Or John here, something that probably I didn't get quite well is that, for example, I think that I'm more head center,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I also use a lot of heart center functions, but not necessarily body center. So what you were saying, to kind of looking for this sweet spot, mean you would think that you are in that spot when every time that you are kind of interacting in situations, you start from that sweet spot, or you will be always starting from your, in my case, head center functions, and then trying to go to that sweet spot?
So it depends on where you can naturally travel, right? John can jump in too. So for me, it helps starting from where I am and then making sure I am layering in. Me personally, my head and heart are very strong. And I think it's occupational hazard, right? Coming from a CFO role and a finance executive role, if you can't drive results and you can't drive decisions, then your career is not successful. So I always joke about how I'm naturally heart-centered, but as an occupational hazard over 30 years, naturally I've been able to develop the others, because otherwise I couldn't have had a successful career, right? So the conscious journey of taking that self-discovery is what helps us do that. But it doesn't matter the order in which you do. But the key is, if I think and I feel, but I don't act, then all of that is a waste. I know that. So every time I think of something, I specifically ask the question, then how am I feeling about it? And how is this going to impact other people as I make the decision? And then how do I execute it, and what is going to be the ramification of those executions? If I can have all those three in whichever order, but I address all three of them as a composite, then as a leader, I'm going to be more mindful in making decisions, and the choices I make are going to have a far-reaching impact for everybody who's going to be affected by it. What are your thoughts, John?
No, I do think you said it beautifully. I mean, I think there's two key components, that I always think about. Okay, what is my core? Where's this core thought coming from? And I think, to the example that we just heard, okay, I feel like I'm at head center. Okay, so I know my core type. Okay, so how are we integrating everything? Because that's what the Enneagram is really, at its core, personality integration through it all to become more centered. There may be times where you lean on your core too much, but it's always good to do that self-check-in. Okay, what's my heart, look at it from a heart perspective. What's my feelings telling me about this, decision before I need to move forward? Do I need to act, or do I not need to act? What's my body telling me to do as you incorporate those three centers? So I think that's really the key, is understanding, my core. Okay, yes, this is kind of where my core is, but, how is this, helping me? Could it be derailing me in certain ways? And then also, how do you use the other two centers to really fully integrate and come away with what you feel is the most well-rounded path forward?
And here is where it's valuable for the whole team to understand and go through this process, because then we can all be each other's blind spot watchers, right? Mm-hmm. And so normally when we do coaching, we recommend that we do coaching, while it is individual coaching, also take the whole team through that journey, because then the entire team becomes each other's blind spot watchers, and a journey taken together is more fruitful. Does that answer your question, Alejandro?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So as we think through the Enneagram and how Enneagram can help us in our self-awareness and self-management, I know, John, you and I talked about it in our blog. Do you want to add any examples or thoughts around it for people?
As far as just self-management,
Yeah.
No, I think, the biggest thing for me, is, in our blog, we're emotional beings, right? So we have emotions that we deal with each and every day. So trying to really identify kind of what may be triggering you sometimes, and journal that. Have maybe a little notepad, or, on your phone, just, okay, I was triggered when this happened. Just kind of that self-reflection to really kind of try to get more to the core. Because it's easy to kind of just brush things off and not worry about it, but to really understand yourself, make that mental log, that mental journal. I'm big on just the self check-in. Is kind of something that I'm huge with. If I have let's say you have a limiting belief, or you're interpreting something a certain way, do a self check. Like, how true is this really? From a 9 perspective, I'll lean in my head. Okay, how true is this? Is this something that is accurate, or is this something that's limited belief? Do I need to act quicker than I'm not doing? But I do a check-in with all three centers to kind of keep it simple, just to make sure that I'm comfortable with the right decision. Because at 9, I hate conflict, right? I don't want I don't want any conflict to be around. I like to see things from different perspectives. So it's important to me, from that piece of it. Okay, what's my head telling me? What's my heart telling me? And then I generally go back to what my gut was telling me, and then I move forward. So by taking that self-check quicker, I'm able to move quicker and grow quicker, and not just grow quicker, but grow wiser, because I'm tapping into all of these three centers of intelligence as I move forward.
And the advantage of keeping a journal is for yourself to see patterns. Because not all of us can see patterns if we do a mental self-check. But if we capture it somewhere on an ongoing basis, over time, the patterns will start revealing themselves. And patterns and identification of those patterns are key to breaking the unhealthy behavior, right? None of us are perfect, right? We're all taking this journey, and we all have room for growth, and we all have room for improvement. So being able to see those patterns is one. And then also having people who are close to us, whether on teams or in our personal lives, who take this journey with us, is another check-in, right? We check in for each other. We check in with each other. And that's equally important because we cannot do this on our own, right? How much of ourselves can we see? There are three things about us, right? The way I see myself, the way somebody else sees me, and then the way I really am. If you ever have been through Johari's window process, you will know that there is more than one of us, the way we show up in the world, right? It's almost like the way I hear my voice when I talk. As I'm talking is very different from how you are hearing me. And the first time I did a radio show, I listened to my voice and I said, that's not how I sound. I have an accent. And my husband laughed and said, yes, dear, you do have an accent. You're Sri Lankan. I'm like, no, I don't sound like I have an accent, right? So if just me talking is that way, how about all the other ways in which I show up? So one of the tricks I do when I have my own team is with the permission of the team, we record our meetings visually, video recording. The value of that is for everybody to go and analyze the video of the interaction and how we are engaging on their own and introspectively come back and say, what could we do better? Was I only in my head space? Was I only stuck in my heart space? Right? Was I just ready to go do without thinking about how it's going to affect other people or how the strategy is going to be connected? Right? And so each person can look at the own video of the team interaction and see how we are showing up. And you can also see who was irritating, whose voice and tone was changing, who didn't want to make eye contact with whom, right? All of these inner plays start coming, and then we can start having those deep dive conversations.
I would add, Kas, just that, I think what's so great about it is when it becomes that common language, it just creates that feeling of trust, right? When we compare these core emotions of fear, sadness, and anger, there's some trust issues that are probably underlying a little bit those emotions at some point. So to be able to have a common language and know, if someone, is calling a spade, and giving that feedback that sometimes we all need, to know that they're coming at it from a good place, by me understanding that Kas is a 2 in her heart center. When she offers me feedback, I know it's coming from a genuine caring standpoint. She strives for me to get better and reach my full potential as an individual, as a whole. So it creates that trust and transparency where you're able to have those partners in all aspects of your life that can help you really grow and fulfill, and are coming with it from a good place of understanding of where they're coming from when they're delivering this feedback, by knowing their centers of intelligence and their Enneagram type.
Mm-hmm. And so if I were to flip that conversation right there, I know John is a 9, right? And Kristen, you're a 9. And you both want peace at all costs at your core, right? So I need to be aware of that. And I need to make sure that you're not settling for something because it's the most peaceful option. It's my responsibility to make sure this is something you really want to do. And how can I meet you halfway? So the wonderful thing about a 2-9 relationship, I'm in a 2-9 marriage. 2s and 9s can fuse with each other where it becomes so blurred you can't tell where one begins and one ends. My husband and I have that kind of a marriage. We always joke about we need to go to a therapist to have our dependency issues sorted out. It's not that we can't get along with each other. We can't be without each other, right? So the need to have peace and make everything so interconnected, and the need to be empathetic and emotionally responsive to the other, creates the kind of fusion that can be scary. And we have to check in on the fact that we don't egg each other on. Right? Because we can be like a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old taking a trip and doing something totally crazy because we were so into each other and we forgot the existence of the rest of the world. Right? So we need to know not just us, who we are engaging with, who we are interacting, and what can be that inner play, and where are the do's and don'ts of that inner play, and where do we kind of do a check-in as a team or a couple and not get sucked into something that we have a tendency to take each other down.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So since as 9s, we want peace over everything else. We don't like conflict. Why is it that the core emotion is anger? Like, how does the core emotion fit into that?
So anger is one end, right? And you're interpreting anger as because of something that happened in your life and you're angry, and all three numbers have the same core emotion, but they react to it differently. So in your point of trauma, you're angry about what happened, but then you relate it to yourself saying, I need to hold the peace in order for this underlying situation to work out. And you've assigned yourself a role as a peacemaker in that underlying circumstances of anger.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
I would add kind of sometimes at 9 that anger is asleep. It's kind of like that volcano that's ready to erupt in some ways. It's asleep deep down inside. And then, there's something that will trigger that anger. Maybe it's being, ignored in some shape or form, or whatever it may be. It triggers it, and all of a sudden you have this eruption. So it's important. I think that's where, you think of, if you really want to say something or something really bothering you, really start feeling in your stomach, that anger just kind of starts boiling up. It's important to kind of get that off your chest and talk to someone, walk through it with someone, and raise your voice. I'll never forget, Kas, the training we were at. I remember the exercise of standing on the Enneagram map, and just kind of a phrase from a 9 to 9, it's one of those things. Raise your height is kind of a thing that kind of stuck out, because more times than not, people want to hear your voice as a 9. They want to hear your input because you are coming from it from a genuine place and strategically thinking of a lot of different sides of the puzzle, because you don't want to generate a lot of conflict with decisions or with that. But raise your voice sooner when you're angry or when you're frustrated, because it'll alleviate a lot of time and a lot of wasted energy that can build up over time.
And 9 focuses a lot on suppressing the anger as opposed to showing the anger. And so you internalize that anger and then you take it out on yourself. Okay. And 9s also shut down because they've internalized everything. So sometimes other people may look at a 9 and say, 9 in conflict may completely shut down and go to sleep, literally. Right. And other teammates might say, oh, she's a 9 or he's a 9 and they're lazy. No, this team is so full of conflict. There is no way a functioning person can be around it. And because this person is number 9 is trying to take all the perspectives and synthesize and find some semblance of peace. And when there cannot be peace, it's like, okay, I'm just going to sleep. Right? That's the way of calming that inner anger, inner turmoil. Not all anger has to be red hot. It can be white hot.
Can I ask a follow-on question to Tatro's question?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was trying to wait for a good entry point, kind of tough there.
Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
First of all, I noticed that I know now why you and I are friends, Kas, because I'm very heart-centered, and you can remember when we first met, it was sort of magical, and we didn't even know
Brandon
why.
and I are professors at the same university.
Yeah, so we just connected. But let me share something personal with you, with everybody here. I went through an obvious traumatic experience somewhere between, I'm going to bring some Leo Buscaglia and maybe a little bit of Erik Erikson into this. Somewhere between 3 and 4, I went through some kind of trauma, and I'm sure it's because of my mother's divorce and the lack of connectivity to my mother. And then eventually I was thrown into this new relationship that never got resolved. I went on through, I thought were normal developments, and eventually became suicidal, depressed, and all that at about 19 years old. And so as I listened to the premise of what you and John are talking about, a lot of it relates to coming back to what was defined as a center that I assume was your solution at that point of comfort. I never had that. Could you speak to that? Because like I said, this wasn't resolved for me, and I didn't learn until later, trying to go back in psychiatry and psychology and sociology type meetings with counselors. I cannot seem to go past 3.5. My memory is is suppressed from that. So if you remember Leo Buscaglia's research, he talks about that primal scream, that moment in your life when something dramatic happens, and you have to really analyze that before you can go on towards your further development. A lot to unpack there, but I just thought I'd...
Yes. So I hear what you're saying, and you missed our conversation with Rajkumari, where she also talks about how the ancestral trauma also is carried in our DNA. So 200 years of trauma prior to us. And the conversation we had is, if you come, how do birds know where to migrate? Nobody has a class for birds that tell them here is the pattern, right? Young birds know how to migrate, right? So instinctively as humans, we have this ancestral memory, but we're not conscious of it, right? Unless we truly start mapping things out and we talk through some of the techniques of doing that. Then beyond that, our own childhood, if seems like when things happened, but you don't remember prior to that event of what things were, right? So for some reason, you're masking all of that out.
Right, it's
blocked. Because it's too
Yeah.
hard for you to feel it, sense it, because to you, the life starts when mom left, right? Or just before she leaving.
And I'm
right?
a little bit heady, to bring your other center there. As you know, I'm an engineer and a doctorate in business, so I'm very heady too. So I'm trying to resolve that. I keep going back to that and try to throw a frame around it, and try to figure out.
Have you thought of trying to be introspective instead of your head with your feeling? Or use your gut and see what you're sensing? Because if you're only being analytical about a feeling that you're trying to put your arms around, because it's
I'm
hard
going to be honest and say no.
You don't want to feel, right?
I'm
The
going to say
reason
no.
we block things out is because we don't want to feel. Whether we are a heart hunter or not, we don't want to feel. So the best example I could give is, most of you who know me know that I grew up in the middle of a war. I grew up in a war zone, and I grew up in a way to put different aspects of my life in boxes, because if I carried that trauma and thought about it or felt it, then I can't move past. Okay? So I grew up in an environment of utter genocide, government destroying minority. I can't even verbalize all the things they do to people. And I grew up every day knowing that is going to be my last day and horrible things could happen to me. And I was a child, right? We would get raided in our homes on our way to school. They'll stop the buses. They'll check the IDs. If you're a minority kid, they'll make you line up and shoot you and throw tires on top of you and have a bonfire in the middle of the road. So you live through this and go to school. And then all of a sudden you see a dead person hanging on a lamppost and they have a sign on the person saying why this person was killed, right? So you live around that, but you have to still get past it. So the way I dealt with it is I put those emotions aside. I started reading, thinking, figuring, and then I made my life about how do I figure while people do what they do, and understanding that how do I structure my life to get out of here. And by the time I turned 16, I left the country. I took my siblings, I left the country without the parents, because I needed to do what I needed to do to get beyond this, right? So unconsciously, I was taking my feeling, but then putting it in boxes aside, and then using my head to figure out and my gut to make decisions, because as a child, you don't know everything, right? And the belief is that if I pack up my bag and go somewhere, then the next step will show itself up, right? So when I wrote my book just this year, going through that process and going through that cathartic experience was highly emotional. Every chapter I wrote, I sat and sobbed. There are chapters in my book I cannot read without crying all over again, because I am reliving those emotions, right? And the people who are reading my book to write reviews are telling me, oh my God, you're being so vulnerable. You're sharing so much to help somebody else. It's already changing me. You're actually holding a mirror to me and helping me feel. So my struggle in writing was how much to tell in a way that it's going to influence somebody to be introspective and drive their own change. But at the same time, how not to tell too much so that I'm not exposing other people. Right? Because it's still a country at war. There are still people there. I still have family there. Some situations you don't want to give too much detail because good people will get hurt in the process, right? So where is that balance? And how do I do it in a way that I remain true to who I am as a person and true to the purpose of why I'm doing this, right? So for me, writing the book was the best way to do both. For me to live through that experience and do that self-check and be introspective and see, am I still truly living my intended purpose? What do I need to continue to do to stay the course? And then what should I put in a box and put away because going those places are not constructive, right? It's like a scab has grown. It's okay to leave it there. The wound is always there, but it no longer controls me, right? So it's coming to that place in a trauma is what's important. What really happened or why really happened may not be the lesson there, but how to deal with it, how to build resiliency, and how do I grow a scab and then move forward and not to allow it to control me? That is where the growth is. So that's how I approach it, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you for your vision. Yeah.
Any
Okay,
thoughts,
guys.
John?
Hi.
Hi. Maria. Go ahead.
So I'm very, I don't know if I'm triggered. I don't know how to like explain myself, but I'm feeling like a lot of emotion and I'm like overwhelmed, maybe like with all the information. But I realized that there's a mixture for me, depending on the situation with the head, heart, and body, that I operate from most of the misuses rather than the actual productive uses of all the centers. And then when you guys were talking about peace, I'm like, I want peace because it feels good and I like always want to be okay. However, I'm still super reactive and then I end up misusing all of my centers. And I don't know if it's a realization of that has me feeling like very staticky and just very ugh. So I just wanted to voice that because John said, voice your, what did he, I don't remember what John said, but he said voice something, so I'm voicing it because I'm mad.
John, you want to take that because you and Ariane can relate to each other. You're the common side of Ariane. So you probably took that journey at some point.
I know. Well, I would encourage you to kind of reflect too on those productive uses. Where do you find yourself, really operating in the zone too? But it's, I think in some ways we all have laundry, we all have uses and misuses. I mean, let's be real with that first off. So it's figuring out, as Kas alluded to, are these strengths serving us for the better or are they derailing us in a more broader well? I think in some ways, we talk about personality integration and again, it's that core type that we love, that we want to zone in on from our Enneagram, but it's also that integration with others. So Ariana, I think, you may be becoming aware of how you're integrating other types. I would explore maybe where you go more, both from a stress standpoint, maybe something to kind of start looking at as you dive into what your Enneagram type may be and how that anger could be showing up in some ways. You don't seem shy about voicing it too. So I could be
shy at all.
So, maybe there's, a little 8 spunk in there. I don't know. That could be there, but it's, I would explore explore that vulnerability a little bit more. Would be something I would challenge you on just to see, okay, where at the core, really where in my stress, where do I feel like these misuses are showing up more?
Yeah.
I challenge you to do.
Yeah. And also think about if you're using your misuses in a way to control the situation because you feel like unless you control, you can't live the life you need to live.
Yeah.
And so the more you try to control, the less control you will have.
That's true. I keep losing control of everything most of the time. So that's true. When it comes to my centers, I feel like I just misuse all of them because when it comes to my head, I do overthink a lot and I literally overthink everything. And then when it comes to taking action, I find it very hard sometimes to actually do what I need to do or get it done. And then I beat up myself for not doing it. And then when I do it, it feels good, but then I just can't do it all the time. So I'll have like a day where I could do all my chores and be extremely productive and all that. But the next week that ain't gonna happen. And then I don't do chores for like a month. That's where I'm at. And then for my heart, I feel like for relationships, sometimes I can be manipulative because I know how people feel, and I know when like the vibes happen and stuff. I mean, when the vibe switches, I'm like, okay, how can I how can I use this to my advantage sometimes? And that's just me. And then I'm extremely passive aggressive because I'm still working through like all my defensive issues and stuff. So like the passive aggressiveness is extreme when it comes to me. So yeah.
So here is the good thing. You're very self-aware.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like the hardest step for most people because people think they're saints, right? So you truly know where your pluses and minuses are. So you already have that major first step down. So now it's a matter of maybe sitting down with a coach because you do need somebody's help, right? And figuring out where you want to go and what are the guided steps you can take to have new habits to be formed. You need to do something consecutively for 3 to 4 weeks for it to become a habit. And if you're going to go through habit forming, then you need to have accountability to somebody. So one of the reasons people have coaches is even if they know what to do, they need somebody to hold them accountable, right?
For sure.
Can I add a case to that, Annie, Cass, if you don't mind, and John? I went through 2 PhD experiences. My first one, I wasn't successful defending. And so I went into the second one with a lot of vision, a lot of awareness of the kind of student I was and what my goals were and all that. And what I did was I met 5 people that first day in class that I connected with. You know, didn't know why at the time, but we connected. We decided to create a pact, the 5 of us, where we would check in with one another, hold each other accountable every week, regardless. Of the 5 people, 4 of us got our PhDs. And it seemed like a trivial thing, but only 1% of the people in America have PhDs. It's a very tough journey, and you're going to be derailed quite a lot. So it's really pointing to everything that you and John are saying here is like without that support system, I don't think I would have felt, you know, as empowered to go through that journey the second time around.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up a good point. Nothing in life can be accomplished in isolation, right? And so that's the beauty of it. And that truly is what brings joy, right? I mean, John and I can go to our respective groups and talk about Enneagram, but what's the fun? Imagine if John and I got together and talked to his network and my network, and we had these conversations. How much richer is this, right? You're getting more than my perspective. Normally you talk to me, right? But you're getting John's perspective.
I kind of want to just add on 2 things that I heard, you know, with Dr. Hamilton, also Ariane. Ariane, I would, you know, challenge you to, you know, rather than looking at all the misuses that you have going on, try to find the opportunity, turn it into a positive spin. What's the opportunity here to get out of that? Because it's easy to get into the negative space. And granted, I'm sure 2020, all of us, we've been hunkered down in a lot of negative emotions that's gotten to us. So not at all, right? But you know, try to see what the opportunity could be from each situation, and that may build some positive wins. And Dr. Hamilton, I mean, Cass said this a little bit, but I think one of the challenges sometimes in addressing those fears is being in solitude, but also being in solitude in the right center. So really, you know, you may be in solitude in the head space too much as you dealt with some of the conflict. Be in solitude with that heart space that may be your core, and really kind of inner reflect on those feelings and find someone you trust that you can express kind of where that fear comes from, and maybe where that fear or that sadness to a certain degree, you know, regarding your mother is showing up in other areas of your life. And maybe what are some, you know, you talked about journaling, what are some of those consistent trends or patterns that could be showing up, and reflecting maybe in that heart space that you're comfortable in more could help, you know, identify maybe some strategies to overcome.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Yeah, I'm actually taking a little bit of that. I'm a journaler like crazy. I got journals all over this house for my life. But someone is writing a book about me, and it's rather interesting, that someone else is writing a book about me. I started writing my own autobiography, but then as someone else writes it, you're getting a different vision of yourself. The Johari window, if you will, that you brought up, and you're right. You're exactly right. They listen differently than what I think I'm saying. And the person comes back to me and they'll say, wait a minute, let's go back to that point, if you don't mind, Dr. Hamilton. And it is helping me scrub my development in very interesting ways, and it depends on the trust factor that both of you brought up. This is a student of mine that I really trusted. He was a very good student, and he wanted a relationship past the degree. And I explored that. I said, why? And he said, I find you fascinating. If you don't mind, I'd like to write a book about you. And I'm glad that Kas brought up about introspect to family and friends, because I just told you guys a little bit about it. This story that this guy is writing about me is going to hurt some people. There's some pretty dark stuff there, and I have to think very carefully now. I got to go back and read his rough draft now and think very, very carefully about what lives I'm going to affect in doing that. But on the cleansing side, the introspective side, I'm loving this. It's really quite helpful. And you're right. I'm very deep in the feeling side of it. But you know what? After listening to both of you, I'm not deep enough. I'm not deep enough.
And let's not forget, we live in a society where boys are raised to believe that they're not supposed to feel, right? And girls are accused of always feeling too much and being dramatic, right? So we have these cultural stereotypes and cultural underpinnings and family underpinnings. All of this show up, right? And so as a male in this world, to be heart-centered is difficult. We live in a world where kindness is a weakness, right? And if you're a man and you are kind, oh my God, God help you. And so you have to wear armor every day so that you don't get hurt and people don't prejudge you. And so how do you truly find that balance to be true to who you are and still succeed? I always remind people kindness is actually a strength. You have the courage to show kindness to a stranger. You have the courage to be vulnerable with somebody you are yet to meet. That is more courageous than being able to take a gun and shoot somebody, right? Because you are willing to make yourself vulnerable. So when we do coaching for leaders, the first thing is we teach them how to be vulnerable. If you can't be vulnerable, there's no reason for anybody else to follow you. And if nobody follows you, you are not a leader. It's not a title you give yourself.
Just think, I was just going to say, just kind of reflect, after, the show, as you go through the weekend, reflect on areas maybe you're not being vulnerable with yourself and showing up. I mean, is a challenge. And just think about how free it would be if you let that one vulnerability be. Just think, you're kind of trapped in that armor, so to speak, how free you would feel if you voice a concern, how free you feel if you really got in touch with inner thoughts. I mean, just one thing, and it's a growth journey, but becoming vulnerable and genuine with yourself is the first step. And with that, your natural kindness and genuineness with others will only replicate.
And I'm wondering here, and as I hear Ariadne and Dr. Brandon here, in how I was mentioning that I think more acting like head and heart, but I think that I'm now doing some introspection. I do react different in situations related with work, in situations related with family, and or with my kids, right? So it depending on how, and sometimes I do act more from the head and the heart, and we have interacted at work with Kas, and so I try to be balanced there. But sometimes I realize now that even I bring too much of the head to my house. And probably because I know that I need to put the rules in certain situations. So I go probably way beyond that, and I need to bring me back. But it's how you kind of don't start necessarily from the same start point, right? Depending on the situation. And how you, even though you are in those different situations, how you try to bring you back, and you are not trying to be more on one thing that you may end up hurting more than you're solving in the issue in the process.
Yes. And striving for balance is key, right? So in your head, imagine yourself as Goldilocks in your male version. Okay. Don't imagine blonde hair, long hair. That would be dangerous. Okay. But as your inner Goldilocks, where is that balance? Where am I out of balance? Or think of a four-legged, three-legged stool. Which leg is short? How do I shore that up so that I have a stool to sit on, right? So whichever imagery that comes to you, relate to that image, because it's an easier way of working through the problems. And you know which center you are ignoring, because there are things there you do not want to face, right? Let's face it, that's reality, right? I do not want to open that box so I can play with these two boxes, right? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I kind of relate to your comment a little bit. Years ago, I was leading a sales team, and one of the pieces of feedback that I got, they would see me, with my kids, little kids on the weekend, playing soccer, coaching soccer, and being the fun dad, so to speak. And then I would almost get too trapped into my head when it came to work and being left brain analytical with numbers. And the feedback guy was like, hey, we need to bring a little bit more of that fun John dad into work. Let's balance that piece of it. So maybe, think about, as at work, where does that fun and vulnerability show up for me? At home, you're the hero to the kids. How, where's that fun and vulnerability showing up for the kids as well? Or, balancing that, there's a time and place for discipline. There's also a time and place to be fun and vulnerable with those you trust too. So it's kind of that centered balancing act. And that's why we love the Enneagram so much.
So as we bring this to a close, does anybody have any questions, or otherwise I'm going to have John share with us his closing thoughts.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. So my question is, how to find the good and the opportunity in the misuses? Because when I ask myself those questions, kind of like a lot of negative answers be coming up. So I don't know how to find the good in the thing.
Do you have a certain example you'd be willing to share that you're struggling with? And we can maybe...
Let's see. For example, when it comes to, what did I have down? Okay, when it comes to overthinking, right? If I'd ask myself, what can I get from this? I don't really get much.
I would suggest, okay, first reframe it from the center approach, because obviously you're stuck in your head thinking of what is this? What's the opportunity if I look at it from my body center, take action with this piece? What's the opportunity here from a feeling standpoint? Tap into your other two centers. Like to joke around, get out of the head sometimes.
Because you're stuck in your head, you have to get out of your head.
Yeah.
The problem is you're overthinking, therefore the solution is not going to come by thinking.
Oh, okay.
So you have to let yourself feel, and you have to come up with different things you can do, and then test those doing out, test those actions out.
Okay.
And then see how you feel when you take those actions, and see how you're showing up for other people when you take those actions.
Okay. Cool.
That's where the opportunity word kind of came in. What's the opportunity by taking action? What's the opportunity by feeling? So
was it Einstein who said the same thought process in which you created the problem, you can't solve it with that same thought process? So you got to get out of your head.
I have a question, Dr. Kas.
Yes, go ahead, Rojan.
Well, actually, I have two. The first one, I heard you mention that for all three centers, the core emotion is the same. When Ms. Latour was talking about anger. And then,
anger is for 8, 9, and 1.
8, 9, and 1.
For 2, 3, and 4, it's sadness.
Okay.
So it's anger, sadness, and So there are 3 core emotions, and 3 of the types are anchored. So each center is tied to that core emotion. But those emotions show up differently.
Okay. And my second question is, from what I've heard today, I think I'm somewhere between head and heart centered, but I know I overthink a lot, like too much. And what I have problem with is like quieting myself. If you ever watch this movie, I think it's Over the Hedge, where the guy said, his head says, listen to his gut feeling. His gut says, listen to his heart, and all he ends up with is an upset stomach. Something like that. I get lost with everything: the heart, the gut, the head, and I have a problem like trying to just quiet everything. I can't stop, and that's something I think I really need at this moment. I don't know if you could
let me ask you a probing question. So since you continuously live in your head and you think a lot, because you and I talk sometimes late at night, right? Because you're thinking about something, right? And when you start tapping into your heart and when you start tapping into your gut, are you still doing that from your headspace? Are you thinking about what you're feeling and are you thinking about what you need to do? Or are you in your doing and are you in your feeling completely?
I think I'm still from the headspace.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You need to get out of your head.
But how? Hello?
Good question. So stop thinking for a moment and start feeling. Talking about movies, Lion King. Mm-hmm. Remember the scene where the little lion is complaining about how everything is in the past and the monkey comes and takes a baseball bat and gives one whack on the head? And says, why did you do that? And the monkey says, hey, why do you care? It's in the past, right? You need a knock in your head. You have to figure out, you just have to turn off your brain completely and start feeling. How do you stop thinking?
I'll have to think about that.
So one of the things
I just told you to stop thinking, and he said, "I'll think about that." Hello.
So maybe what you can start doing is making lists about what you feel, making lists about what you want to do, and then, John, you're a 9, right? You're a body center.
Yes.
Okay. So you come from a place of sensing things as your starting point, right? Mm-hmm. In your body. Yeah. How do you turn that off and turn on your feeling?
I turn my feeling?
Yeah.
Number one, I just, I go for a walk usually. I try to get out, and maybe it's a run. For me, I like to run. So I'd say more of a run. But when I do that, it allows just kind of the energy that I have built up inside to kind of go elsewhere, and I'm able to get to a clearer path where my head's more productive, but I'm also tapping into that. So often you can get clouded by just staying locked in mode. So you have to find that outlet, that release, whether it be talking to a coach, whether it be going for an exercise, whether it be getting some feedback from a different individual on how they can challenge you to move in a different direction. I think those are the pieces that at least help me, but you got to find a different outlet. And I would suggest trying to get outside, get some fresh air, sense things, start feeling the ground you're walking on. What is that telling you, about the situation? Really, do whatever you can to reevaluate the situation, not from your head, but with those other sensors. And sometimes those outlets help.
Your mind is not going to solve all your problems. So one of the things, growing up in my part of the world, one of the things we insist is in your home and in your backyard or wherever, take your shoes off and walk barefoot. Walking barefooted on earth creates a different kind of a body sensation and a different kind of feeling. It truly, in a very tactile kinds of ways, helps you get out of your head. Okay, when you do yoga, when you do other things, they really teach you some of these techniques to get out of your head and be in the moment. Okay, when you're constantly thinking, you're worried about something that's going to happen that hasn't happened yet, right? But what you're worried about in the future, you're missing out on your today. And if you don't live today, you don't have a tomorrow. Because when tomorrow becomes today, you're still worried about tomorrow, right? And so, go ahead.
I had one thing to add. I just remembered. I think it was last 2 weeks or something. I was feeling like extremely frustrated with like the move and everything. And then I got so angry because when I get angry, I want to break stuff. But I know I can't break stuff. So like I need to. Anyways, I started writing.
Remind me not to invite you to my house when you're angry.
So I started writing out my feelings, and then I just started writing everything. And then I was saying like not very nice things about myself. And then all of a sudden it clicked, and I realized that what I was feeling frustrated about had nothing to do with the situation at hand. It had nothing to do with the way I was thinking about myself. It had everything to do with something completely, totally unrelated. So my thing is journaling. A lot of times journaling has saved my life. I'll probably say that story in another day, but journaling has definitely saved my life. And I have this thing whereby journaling has helped a lot. So if there is a thing that's too much in your head, Roj, you could always just start writing it out. And eventually when you just let it flow, be like, brain, I allow you to like just let go. Whatever you need to let go, just let it go. And then eventually it will just start flowing out of you, and you'll be like, where is this coming from? It's just gonna blow your mind. So that's just a little tip that I wanted to leave you with, because I remembered it actually helped me the other day.
Thanks.
And go back and read that journal a lot. I mean, I pulled out a journal the other day that I started way back in undergrad some 30 years ago. And wow, it's like to remember where I was there and where I am now. Quite interesting. So yeah, also good journaling, but also read it.
So wonderful conversation, exciting. We are going to build on this every fourth Saturday. So John, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you so much for being inclusive with this community, and this community looks forward to having you again.
No, I'm very appreciative for the opportunity. Yeah, very appreciative for the opportunity. It's so great to meet you all. Kas has spoken very highly of this whole group. And, I'm thrilled for Kas and your new book and, what you're doing too. So you're making a difference with this group and so many others. So thank you for hosting me. And I'm excited to be back here in a month, and probably will pop in on a session or two.
Beautiful. And the wonderful thing about today is we talked about the importance of trust as we grow into our centered self, where we're balancing all three centers. And next week, I am going to have a friend of mine who's a CEO and who is called the Trust Ambassador in the American marketplace. He is going to be my guest. We're going to talk about trust and how do we build trust and how do we harness that trust for our success. And we're also going to talk about the nonverbal ways and cues we are giving out to either build or break trust unconsciously. There are ways we consciously and unconsciously evoke trust or lack thereof. And we're going to explore all of those avenues. And so the pieces we're going to put in place are going to help us when John and I get together 4 weeks from now to have the next layer of conversation. And please remember, John and I write a monthly blog. And we publish the blog a week before the show. So if you're following us on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, LinkedIn is where we are posting the blog. Feel free to join us, follow us. Enneagram Aspire is the name of the blog. Happy to send that to you folks if you want, okay? And look forward to having you all at the next episode to talk about trust and how do we build trust and how are we helping or hurting us through our conscious and unconscious approaches. As always, you can contact me at kas@kashenry.com. You know other ways of getting hold of me, and I cannot wait to see you all again next Saturday. And as you have learned today, be gentle with yourself and start figuring out that centeredness where you are able to bring your head, heart, and your entire body center into the mix of how you think, how you function, how you make decisions, so that your life is balanced and you have less stress. You'll figure out over time, when you find that balance, life is truly freeing, okay? But remember, that balance is not going to come overnight. And even when you find it, it can be elusive. We need each other. So John is one of the persons who helps me. We talk, we keep each other straight, right? So we need that network. And as we grow this network, and as each of you grow, you have each other to help balance out too. So that's the beautiful thing about having a community. You don't even have to be in the same geography. You can be there for each other. And this is a virtual community, right? Plus you all have vacation planning to do now, because everybody's in different parts of the world. We have the Caribbean, we have Latin America, we have North America. So it's a beautiful thing, right? So go out there and have a beautiful weekend. And remember, every human interaction you have is an opportunity for your transformation. So go out there and transform lives. But please take a moment to be kind, gentle to yourself, and transform yourself as well. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.
Thank